All right, last lesson for Chapter 2, Language Network 9. Complements are objects of verbs. Definitions. Don't forget linking verbs of subject complements are what complete the idea of the simple subject. Predicate nominatives and predicate adjectives. Those were linking verbs. Today we're talking about action verbs. Action verbs also have complements to finish the writer's thought. These come in two different forms. Direct object, which directly receives the action of the verb, and the indirect object, which indirectly receives the action of the verb. Don't worry, I know those definitions really don't help you much at all. But the example coming up, you want to make sure you write down and take good notes on. It'll prove immensely helpful to you if you understand just this first example. Two other terms to know as well. The transitive verb. This is an action verb which has a direct and or an indirect object. If the action verb has at least one object, then it's a transitive verb. An intransitive verb is an action verb which has no object. There still might be an adverb or some other phrase after it, but there's not a noun which directly or indirectly receives that actual action of the verb. Pre-example, meaning this is the one that you definitely want to write down. I threw Chris the ball. For a number of students, they find that they actually take out the word Chris in the example and put their own name in the example, and therefore it helps them remember it a little more personally. It's up to you. We still find our steps. So the verb is threw. Simple subject. I threw. I threw what? I threw the ball. Ball is a direct object because it receives the actual throwing action here. If I threw Chris anywhere, I'd probably get in trouble if not hurt myself. But what is Chris? Well, who is the ball thrown to? I threw the ball to Chris. Chris indirectly receives the throwing action because he receives the ball. The key in the sentence is that Chris isn't after the word to. If to were in the sentence and Chris followed it, then to would be a preposition and Chris would be the object of that preposition. Instead, I threw Chris the ball. It's important we understand that even though the sentence reads in one order, I threw what? It's not asking what word comes next in the sentence. It's asking what did I throw? In this case, the ball is a direct object. I threw the ball to whom? I threw to Chris. Chris is the indirect object because I threw the ball to Chris, and he's indirectly affected by the throwing action. He may have to catch the ball, may have to duck out of the way, may have to step to the side, may have to go get it, because my throw was terrible. In any event, we know that Chris is indirectly affected by the throwing of the ball, but the ball is actually what was thrown. All right. In general, how do you do this? Big surprise. Number one, find the verb. Find a simple subject. In part, you find that so you know which noun isn't an object. It's not a direct object. It's not an indirect object. It's not the object of a preposition. In part, we use it in order to eliminate that as a possible object. 3, you want to check to make sure that the verb is an action verb. If it's not, we're not going to look for direct objects nor indirect objects. All right, now we get to the big stuff. Ask action verb what? Well, we start by always looking for the direct object first. In the example, we have through what? If there's an answer to the question, the action verb followed by what? Whatever the answer is, if it's a one-word answer, if it's a noun or a pronoun, that should be the direct object. We may or may not find a direct object in a sentence. Even if we do, and even if we don't, we should still check for indirect objects. So we ask action verb to whom? Whatever that verb is, we add the word to or imagine the word to in the sentence. Through to whom? If there's an answer to this question in the sentence, then the answer is going to be the indirect object. Be careful. Watch out for any nouns following prepositions. All right, a few reminders here. Only action verbs can have direct and indirect objects. Again, if it's a linking verb, we're not even going to look for it. Be especially careful if you're looking at a grammar test that has multiple choice answers. Oftentimes you'll find a word in bold or underlined, and they'll ask you, is it a predicate noun or predicate nominative, predicate adjective, action verb, or linking verb? Knowing that you checked for whether it's an action verb or linking verb will tell you which two incorrect answers you can already cross out. And then from there you follow the steps in these lessons. Also, it's important to note that every action verb doesn't need or have to have a direct object or an indirect object. There could be only a direct object. There could only be an indirect object. There could be both a direct and an indirect object. Or there could be neither. In the first three examples there, that's going to be a transitive verb. There's at least one object. If there's neither a direct nor indirect object of any kind for the action verb, then it's an intransitive verb. Example, Metcalf Junior High students ride buses. The verb is ride, so students is a simple subject. Students ride what? Students ride buses. That's the direct object. Students ride buses to whom? There's no answer to that question in the sentence, therefore there's no indirect object. Mr. Orth told Kayla to sit down because she's a naughty, naughty girl. Mr. Orth is a simple subject, told is a verb. Mr. Orth told what? Well, usually in the verb told what might be words in quotation marks. It might be a statement or a quote. There's really no answer to that question, so there's no direct object in this sentence. DO means direct object when it's capitalized. Mr. Orth told to whom? Well, he told it to Kayla. So Kayla is the indirect object in the sentence. To sit down is literally an infinitive phrase, which we're not going to worry about identifying that for purposes at this early stage. Another example, Star Wars is my favorite movie. Get over it, it's true. Okay, we have the verb is. Stop. Since the verb is, it's a linking verb. There's not going to be direct objects, not going to be indirect objects. We stop. Just a quick reminder for you. All right, practice. This applies to the whole chapter now. If you have questions, go through it. Check with your teacher and see if they can help you understand things. Watch any videos you need to. You have the links. You can go back to them later if you need to. But get the information you can, do your best, and forget the rest.